Joining us for political talk on another PolitiPod Live. Tonight we'll cover the SAVE Act, ICE, the Supreme Court, and a Trump dump. We'll also have our segments on the media and Election Central. I'm Tom Bickle.
I'm Hannah Soldner.
And I'm Matt Nisanoff. We start with the SAVE Act, although not quite certain how you get to that name. The interesting twist to it is that there was a Democrat who had decided to vote for this voter suppression law, and a Republican who decided to vote against it. But with this one-on-one switch, what it meant was the bill was going to pass with enough votes. However, last minute, apparently, the Democrat involved, uh, Fetterman from Pennsylvania, apparently changed his mind, and I'm not quite certain why. You guys hear anything about this?
I think it was
Guys and gals?
oxygen loss to that area of his mind that he changed.
I heard it was a massive swing of approval, or
Well,
disapproval, as it were.
Fetterman.
very interesting. Well, let's hope that's all it took, and that it was just a reaction to public pressure, and then perhaps we can keep him a little bit better on track with what's going on. Although this whole thing with Fetterman and how he's been reacting since his medical condition came up has made a lot of people kind of want to find out more about how he makes his decisions nowadays.
Yeah, speaking of changing his mind.
Yeah, literally. So the SAVE Act, if you don't know, it had to do with voting rights and taking away some rights by saying that there had to be a higher bar for the proof of citizenship in order to vote. The thing is, there's already a requirement to prove that you're a citizen to vote. When you register, whether you do it through your driver's license or whether you go to the DMV and do it there, you have to bring a whole bunch of documentation. I know in New York, there's three lists actually, which you have to look at and take one piece of information, one identifying piece of information from each of the three columns in order to meet a point system that allows you to have enough points in order to get a state ID. So it's already pretty rigorous. And I don't know how are your states? Anybody have anything different than that?
I'm also in New York, so
Yeah.
Well, I'm out in Oregon, and I do clerical work, and there's some application processes that require two forms of ID. Um, One usually has to be like a driver's license or a passport. The other one can be your Costco card or anything with a picture on it, or even a social security card with no picture. So if that's as onerous as it got, I wouldn't be. I'm not for any additional restrictions to being able to vote that aren't in place already. But that wouldn't be such a bad hurdle. What happens is you have to have a birth certificate or maybe a passport. These other things that are arduous to get together. Maybe I've been around a while. You move, things burn down. I mean, this or that. Things get exposed to rain, and it's hard to get replacements. Not impossible. It's one of those things adults have to do. But if there were real election fraud, I'd be all about tightening the belts and increasing the weave of security that forms a protective blanket for us all. But it's all trumped up BS. It's nonsense. It's not happening. It's nothing. It's like putting on a Kevlar helmet to just go outside every day. Not necessary. It's overkill, and it's obviously not meant to improve voting security, but to limit who votes and make it harder to vote and make it more expensive. And the thing that bugs me, okay, one of the thing people they want to stick it to is trans people, because they don't have male or female checked where it's supposed to be according to them, or maybe they had a name change. to represent their truer self, as anybody is allowed to do. I understand they want to hack away at those folks. Okay, they're hateful people, but they, by definition, have to take married women with them. You know what I mean? You get a name change often when you, in this patriarchal society, you change your name, you get married, and they're gonna have to go to the DMV too. They're gonna have to go to the county recorder's office too. And those are, cisgendered wives are kind of heavy in their demographic, but they're not afraid to lay down some friendly fire as long as it hurts somebody else they hate more. Uh, I don't know. I don't. This just keeps being awful.
Yeah,
Yeah, I
there's
mean,
also,
like,
please go ahead.
oh, I was going to say these sort of like clerical errors are all over the place. I had family members who, I had a family member whose like birth certificate had his dad's last name and his social security card had his mom's last name. Or I had my grandpa had his middle name was Mitchell and it was spelled with like one L on his birth certificate and like two L's on his driver's license or whatever. Like those things are everywhere. And I mean, like, also, like, this is especially like with in-person voting, like who is going to spend the time to like go and vote at like 10 places to swing not that much in an election? um and then when it comes to like mail-in ballots, it's like a similar thing. You would have to know the name of a person, and you would have to know all their identification, and you would have to assume they weren't also going to vote, and you would also, and getting convicted of those things is like a felony. So it's like a lot of work to go into to get like maybe a vote or two. um and the punishment is massive. um and Tom, like you said, like there's like they have been, how long have people been talking about voter fraud? And so there's been like lots of research on this. It's just not happening because of all these reasons.
Exactly,
um
it's negligible at best.
Yeah, and it's weird, like talking to friends of mine who like live in other countries where like voting is required, and they're like, it blows their mind that there would be anything like in the way of it.
Yeah,
Wouldn't you want everybody who can vote to vote? Like it's the most like it's it's sort of the most like American in our sense, but like patriotic thing you can do. Just go like vote. So
Yeah, that's two things that the right wing magosphere has robbed us of. Is any pride in the flag? They've grabbed that and ran it through the mud, and being proud to vote.
that said, if you have not read about the Afro Man trial, which involved him wearing an American flag suit, I implore you to look into the Afro Man trial that has happened over the past week. And so it's,
You
yeah,
know,
I'm getting some lemon pound cake, I'll tell you that.
yeah.
somebody told me he was a red hat MAGA person, and so yeah, and I googled it. I couldn't find any evidence of that, but he has been able to uh, skewer the skewer uh, powers that be. So you gotta love
Yeah,
him in an underdog fashion. So the question, the jury's still out on that, as far as I know. If anybody knows, let me know.
yeah, but the album is out, so if you want to hear for yourself, go find the album. I mean, I did on iTunes, that I use, and um, he is very he's not holding back, and he's very accurate and very specific about things that he's talking about. And all the police officers who tried to sue him for defamation had to go to court and say, "Oh yeah, I had no, yeah, I absolutely feel that this did damage to my reputation and to my good name and all that kind of thing." And it was like, "Oh, you tried to steal his lemon pound cake? Oh,
Right.
your wife slept with him, or he says your wife slept with him. You think she did? Oh well, I mean, she might have. I don't know." And
Who among us can
so
be sure, Your Honor?
you got, you got these guys saying
Not
really
like she'd tell me. I mean,
wild.
Jesus.
That's true. But really incredible stuff. Um, but back to the Save Act for 2 seconds. That I'll say that, yeah, the unintended consequences that both of you have mentioned are very real, and to answer Hannah's question, you mentioned who would do that, who would go out and try to vote in multiple sites and see who would. Well, actually, a number of Republicans. The last 8 or 10 stories that I've seen about people trying to pull hoodwink election officials to try to get in extra votes at different polling places have been Republicans. They've been trying it out. And so it's even worse than you can imagine when the ones who are complaining about it the most are actually the ones who are doing it. But that also, at this point, probably should not surprise any of us. Every accusation they make is a confession, and that's
And the
you,
fact that they keep getting caught is proof that the system works.
yeah, exactly. Yep.
So,
Speaking of the system working, we're going to move ourselves on to our first segment of the evening, and that is on the media. Ta-da! On the media. And we've got a number of things to talk about here. We'll start off with the Pentagon removing the press offices. They tried to kick out a number of press, take away credentials and kick out press journalists. And the journalists made some noise about it. And the judge said, well, you can't do that kind of thing. And Kegseth said, well, you know what? I have to let him back, but I don't have to let them have offices. So he closed down their offices, which is wonderfully Trumpian in its pettiness and ridiculousness. What else? What do you think?
what else broadly, or what else do I think about this specific thing? No, I mean, you're right. It's petty, and there's like no, it's the whole thing is absurd. Like, and it kind of reminds me with the voting, like, get the voices out there. If you think you can win in the whatever marketplace of ideas or whatever, then if you think that Democrats have terrible ideas that nobody should listen to, then why are you so afraid? Just let people report about stuff.
Well, the Republicans haven't been able to win on issues for the past 50 years,
Right.
which is why they've gone into the culture wars. So I can see them desperate to try to cover any fact that comes up, trying to eliminate it. But Tom, what were you about to say?
Well, I'm pretty happy with it. I got to say, as much as I've read about this story, or as much or as little as I've read about it, I felt like I understood what was happening and what was going to happen, and I have no reason to, because I'm not that learned. But it was my instinct, which I usually can't trust. It was my instinct that if he started hacking away at the journalists covering the Pentagon, he was going to lose, because you can't take all the journalists from ostensibly reliable organizations, believable outfits, and either tell them how to report or throw them the hell out. Because if you do, first of all, they shouldn't subject themselves to be told what to report. Most of them wouldn't go along with it, of any reputable organization, CBS notwithstanding. So if they swallow that, then they're suspect. So but I think most of them would leave. CNN's not going to let you tell them how to report. NBC. And so if you usher out all the reliable, believable journalists, all you're going to have is Fox, Weekend in the Morning, OANN, and the Pillow Guy. Nobody gives a shit what any of those people say as far as credibility and as far as reach. I mean, Fox still has a big audience, but nobody's going to listen to OANN anyway. So they're dooming any coverage, and they'll just, and the reputable reporters will get their news from leaks and from regular old, not having an office at the Pentagon, reporting. They'll get their information. And I'm sorry, go ahead.
They may not get the party line information, which is what is the point.
Even more self-injurious to these knuckleheads.
Scores and scores of years ago, the Philippine Wars, the Marines figured out that they were fighting not only the enemy, but they had to do something with the general populace, and they didn't want to just try to kill everybody. They figured, oh, we got to do something different than we've done before. We got to try to win their hearts and minds. We've got to try
Yeah.
to gain their trust and see if we can get them to help us with our enemy. And things like eventually developing into having the press corps and the press corps embedded was for a very specific purpose, being that they wanted to, frankly, they wanted to manipulate the press. They wanted to make certain the information going out had their spin. So kicking them
Right.
out of the Pentagon's probably not going to help with that, I think.
Yeah, so I didn't think it was going to be a good strategy. I think they were playing a losing game from the beginning, and I'm amazed they couldn't see it. If I'm somebody as dumb as me could see it, and it seems like it's working that way, and also has the added benefit of not flying in court. You can't just have apparently you can't just let some people in and some people out. So they said to hell with it. Everybody can get out. Okay, fine. Again, shooting yourself in the foot there, Elmer, but go right ahead if you think you're winning.
Yet still a government service. The military is still a government service, and the government is the public is the public sector. You can't just say you're in and you're out. You have to. And a matter of fact, the military did lead in breaking civil rights, bringing people in and including them as opposed to excluding them.
Hmm.
And that was, of course, just after World War II, and then eventually there's other issues, civil rights, that they did not take a leading position on, but that the die is cast. They're supposed to do that, and that's expected of them because they are a public service like everyone else. Hannah, anything else about this before we move on?
No.
Okay. Well, who can tell us more about the Warner and the Ellisons?
Well, so Paramount Skydance, which is the new version of Paramount, which owns CBS and Viacom. That's what I'm trying to think of. It's a good thing I work in this industry and I actually just remember these. You know what? They used to be called the Famous Players Lasky. That was the last truly time they were great. So no, so they won the bid over Netflix to take over Warner. And so and it's a shame that that's all run by the Ellisons, Larry Ellison and his son, whose name escapes me. And they are strongly on the Trumpian side. We talked about them a few weeks ago when we were talking about with Stephen Colbert and stuff with Jimmy Kimmel and just like a lot of these pushbacks they've been giving. And this would lead to them taking over HBO, CNN, a lot of these other news places, and being able to kind of restructure them. It's also, a lot of the media is run by Barry Weiss up there, who's mostly just an opinion columnist who's now been given a lot of power. I mean, it's just it's bad on the face of it. It's bad that people should not be wealthy enough to individually buy these up. It seems very like William Randolph Hearst kind of energy. But yeah, like the fact that a person basically could buy something up, and obviously this isn't the first time this has happened. This includes, the Washington Post and all the things that have been bought up by Amazon and things like that. It's such a and I guess Twitter. It's just such a bad thing for people, and it has such a long history to it. And the antitrust laws should be rewritten. They're written for a world that no longer exists. And I don't want to get into, I guess, any further opinion, but yeah. What do y'all think about the Ellisons and Paramount and
It's crazy the way they did it. I mean, there was a perfectly legitimate offer and a perfectly good setup, and then all of a sudden they're doing this hostile takeover thing, using the system, the money system, in order to subvert the plan that was in place. And on top of it, the people who are providing the money were not terribly concerned with, the public welfare. Certainly not their top concern. And so it's a detriment to the public waves that these guys are in control. So that's all I would say. Should we jump over to Meta and a couple of words on Meta and Elon, and then we'll move through?
sure?
Sounds
Or well,
right.
yeah.
Right, Tom, what do you think about Meta?
Well, not long ago, a California jury found that Meta and Google were to blame for the depression and anxiety of a woman who compulsively used social media as a small child, awarding her $6 million in a rare verdict holding Silicon Valley accountable for its role in fueling a youth mental health crisis. Jurors concluded that Meta and Google should pay the woman $3 million in compensatory damages and an additional $3 million in punitive damages, with Meta on the hook for 70% of that amount. Take that.
That's right, and that's some good news, actually. And although it does sort of explain, Meta came out today saying they were going to lay off a bunch of people, which I think is a PR move in response to having lost this case, frankly. And but clearly they deserved it. I don't think there's a. I don't think actually. I don't think even they deny that they deserve it. They just don't think it should be so much. They just don't like the amount involved. But even they were like, "Yeah, this is a bad thing. We're doing it, and we should." But don't hold it against us. That was basically their argument in court, and but the court did the right thing in this case. How about moving on to our favorite guy here? So one of our favorites to chat with, Elon Musk.
Sweet dude. Stellar dude.
Yeah, exactly. What has he managed to destroy this week?
Well, U.S. federal jury found Elon Musk liable, not likable, but liable on Friday for claims he defrauded Twitter shareholders by trying to drive down the social media company's stock price so he could renegotiate or back out of his $44 billion takeover in 2022. The verdict from a jury in San Francisco federal court came in a closely watched civil trial where Musk, the world's richest person, was accused of falsely claiming on social media that Twitter underreported how many fake and spam accounts, known as bots, were on its platform. So yeah, he just smeared the thing to lower the price. How about that? Does that sound like anybody you know?
Exactly. Gosh, that's shocking.
Unheard of.
Yeah.
It's
Um,
it's interesting because I mentioned here, I think on my first episode, that like one of Musk's other things, Tesla, is worth more than like the five largest vehicle companies, automotive companies in the world, and it is not one of those five. And it's worth more than five companies who are objectively worth more than it. And so it's I guess it's a little bit of poetic justice that a lot of money. He's the richest person in the world based on bullshit money, and he's now gotten pegged for doing some other stuff with bullshit money. So hopefully they'll take all his money away. They won't, but that'd be nice to think.
yeah, but that's the standard practice of that sort of people. They work on leveraging money from the banks or from other people based on the fact that they are so dramatically rich. And then people actually give them more money to do things. So they're not spending their own money on the thing that they're risking. And on top of it, they're getting exponential amounts of money to do anything they want. Hey, rich people are building rockets to go into space now.
They're job
And
creators, and I'll have you know it.
yeah, right, exactly. So just any crazy thing that happens, they can feel free to go into. They certainly aren't going to use that money to cover taxes. That's certainly not going to be their portion of taxes is not going to be something they're going to spend on. So they
Uh,
can do all these other extracurricular activities, and there's some other extracurricular activities we'll get to later in the show. But that's who they are. That's what they do. Okay, let's move on to our next issue, which is ICE and what's going on over there.
Well, they're
Uh,
all up in the airport, Matt. I mean, for Pete's sake, for solution, a non-solution to a problem nobody asked for them to non-solve. ICE being deployed to, I guess, the busiest airports, Matt. And what are they doing? They're standing around, phone in one hand,
yeah, they're texting.
drink in the other, and getting in the way and gumming up the food court. It's not like they're doing anything. I heard they beat up an old lady at SFO, but then I also heard they weren't at SFO, so I'm not sure what's going on with that. I got to do some kind of reading on that, get ahead of it. But
Well, what we do know is they're getting paid, and they're going there, and they're doing nothing. And the TSA guys, who are getting sort of the short end of the stick here,
that is
going to
rich.
work and not getting paid. And Republican senators are dropping by with pizzas to help them out, not giving them money, but giving them an occasional pizza. That's gonna to boost their morale.
So they can
And
stand there and do their work with pepperoni heartburn. Meanwhile, some booger flicking phone scroller is standing there doing jack shit fuck all, earning twice his salary and receiving it. You got to be kidding me. I don't know.
You keep saying they're doing nothing. Solitaire is something. You can't just say that they're hard work.
They're going to flip themselves. You're right.
All right.
Respect to Josh Johnson today, who said he would rather ICE be doing nothing than whatever they were doing in Minneapolis.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean,
Sure.
like the
I'm still going to cap on them for it, but go ahead.
Oh, please, by all means. The whole idea that like ICE has more money than they'll ever need because of the one big beautiful bill that Trump pushed through, and then he's refusing to end the shutdown, and instead he's just going to have everything filled with ICE because he has extra money elsewhere, is first of all, I think, a plot on like a Simpsons episode, but it also feels very much like, I don't know, just like a 2-bit, like something that would be made up in like a terrible like crime novel. But then, people have already, I saw today that somebody might have suggested like if the Save Act doesn't get passed, then maybe they'll just like send ICE people to intimidate voters. But basically he now has like a private army funded by the American taxpayer with no oversight that does whatever he wants.
Right. And it will be even less because the Senate approved Mark Wayne Mullen to step into the top spot. So there's certainly even less a chance of actual of an adult being in the room.
Yeah, that guy got through, and Trump must be pretty happy with it because he seems like a real scumbag, and that's what he needed to replace. And I got to tell you, the more I read about it, the more convincing it is when I hear someone say that his lieutenants are very valuable. You can't be a despot without lieutenants and doing the dirty deeds to get things done. And if you lose one, a la Christy Nome the Burlegged Ho, if you lose one, you have to make sure they don't turn on you, for one thing. But you also have to get a new person in there, groom them all up real quick, and make sure they're all pointed in the right direction and not going to talk to the feds. And you know what I mean? They're not going to wimp out once you want to grease a couple of citizens now and then. That's not necessarily easy to find. And so I'm glad that we forced his hand to cast about for another one. And there's probably no ending to the line of zombies and ghouls that would line up and do his evil bidding. But forcing the change, I have to say, is got to be a good thing. And I'm just sad that he was able to get through. Somebody said, "Well, he was a senator, so that makes it easier." The Senate. I'm like, really, man? Is that what it's come to? He's obviously just like a human chew toy. There's nothing there. Uh, but
Well,
but he's a senator. Well, all right.
let's move on to the two other issues that we want to mention here, and then we can move on as well. But does anyone want to have a say on the State Department announcing the citizens of 12 additional countries will now have to post a bond of 15K to apply for a visa,
I'm
and
against
that
it.
yes, good, yeah, and that it also brings the total number of countries where their citizens have to do that for a visa is up to 50.
It's
Um,
it it was always a bullshit excuse that um the whole idea of like meritocracy that like Republicans try and talk about, and it's just like, oh, like merit. Um but this is like even clearly more of a like it shows the bullshit of it, because like, as a person who's hired people from, other countries and whatever, I don't even think about that. I just, somebody comes in and they interview with me and they're the best person for the job and I hire them. But now you're going to basically, especially companies who are not huge, or if you're, like, yeah, a smaller company or maybe a smaller role. Now a company has to pay $10,000 to hire this person. So that's basically just added, you know, onto their wages for that year. And it seems so um it's so absurd to me. These are people who um I mean, there's the also a lie, but the idea that America's this like giant melting pot and we bring the greatest and the best of the best and the brightest of the brightest from around the world. And like, yeah, but now if you're, whomever we don't like, you have to be even more the best of the best to come in. Just like, um, and I mean, especially like, it is also such a like lie to have these people who, maybe they come and they go to college here, right? They moved here when they were 18. They spent years in college, maybe years in grad school. They have community here. They've maybe interned here, and now all of a sudden it's like, oh, you can't get a job because we decided you're a country that you don't like, and now you got to go home. And so, like, to what end was any of this? That's so frustrating.
Agreed, agreed. And I'll mention a quick issue as well, which is that Minnesota is suing the federal government. The state and local governments have combined their efforts because, unlike the longstanding precedent of the federal government working with local authorities in in researching and investigating criminal activities, in the case of the murder of American citizens like Alex Preddy and Renee Good, and the kidnapping of Julio Cesar Sosa Solis, the federal government promised to work with the local authority and then within days pulled back and refused to provide any information. And the state and the city are saying, and the local governments are saying, we don't need this as a precedent. We need to continue to work together regardless of what we're going to find, because that's what we have to do. We have to get the investigation in to find out what the facts are, what the truth is. And even if you don't like it, you gotta pull together to get that done. Um, so they're doing the right thing. That's that sort of thing where it's a little, it's not as much as we want, but it is the sort of thing that needs to happen. So uh, kudos to Minnesota and the local officials that are together on this and trying to hold the federal government accountable. we'll move on to the segment, our next segment, which is Election Central. And PolitiPod, along with Election Central, will bring you information on elections, not only just future elections, but also news about elections. In the next week, we'll see elections or election related activities, including party conventions, Utah on the 28th, and local elections breaking out in Delaware and South Carolina and Texas, and Iowa on the 31st, and a special general election in Massachusetts up in the House of the 5th Essex District. The Supreme Court has ruled that mail in ballots in an election that are postmarked the day of the election, but traditionally given a 5-day grace period to actually be received by the Board of Elections, are now illegal. The Republicans and Libertarians who brought the case said that the 1845 law establishing elections by mail only, or established the elections, only referred to that as election day. So therefore, waiting for the mail-in ballots, no, not acceptable. So the grace period is out the door. An argument that this is as ridiculous as it sounds, and of course, it's only acceptable to Republicans that lead the court, unfortunately. So they were able to get it passed, or they were able to vote in favor of that, striking down that rule. And we talked about mail-in ballots and the resulting elections, and some of the fact that it's incredibly rare. It's a fraction of a percentage, and that that elections are well run by the counties as they have been for scores of decades. Okay. Um, Anything about elections before we go to the next issue?
Um, this isn't particularly about elections, but something you said reminded me of it. All of this, like, sorry, my dog is upset. All of these, he's upset about elections, probably.
Exactly. He's mad at the Supreme Court, and good for the dog.
All of these things about election fraud but all kinds of other fraud, food stamp fraud or whatever. There is no way to hold up these like sort of non-existent but like fake strawmen evil people who are doing this fraud without also kind of undercutting the hard work of people who are doing the elections, like monitoring the elections, investigating the elections, whatever. And basically nobody ever talks about the reverse of that. So like basically I'm saying like, so these people have been, all these people who even, chosen to like run our elections for all these years have been incapable of doing the job. You're basically like shitting on all of these people, but that never gets brought up as part of the discussion. And I just feel like, there's a reason that a lot of these people exist and they're doing this work. And yeah.
Fair enough. All right, with that, we will move on to our next issue, which is the Supreme Court. Speaking of, the Supreme Court is now against freedom of speech, but I'm sure it will be fine. They decided to not hear a case about a Texas law that requires police to arrest journalists who ask government sources about stories and get information that was not known publicly previous to that. It's very clearly a matter of freedom of speech.
Otherwise known as journalism.
Journalism, right? Exactly. And the precedent has been protected for this is a precedent. This is something that has been before the court before, and all the other courts have always said, yeah, there's a place for this. We live in a society where we need there to be a that we need to have journalism. We need a media. We need a fifth estate that will look at and explore and understand and investigate. But not the Supreme Court doesn't think Texas should be involved in that sort of stuff. And um, the case in question is about a journalist who was arrested for asking a source to comment on a story with information that had not been previously released. And as I say, as you pointed out, Tom, what was formerly called journalism in America is undermined by this decision.
So are they going to start arresting people who do like Freedom of Information Act, like FOIA requests? It's ridiculous.
Well, right. I mean, if this is made into a national law, then I suppose as long as the information was pre-existing, was known previously. There's something about Calvin in there. I haven't made the connection yet, but there's got to be some way to phrase it that it's sort of the Calvinism of journalism, where you have to have a pre-existing bit of knowledge. You can't have knowledge that you just find out about. But I haven't gotten there yet. I'll work on that.
Bureaucratic Calvinism.
Bureaucratic Calvinism. Nice.
There is going to be no new news from this point forward ever. This is the end of news. That was a little. I didn't mean. I meant that to be in a jokey way. Yeah, like nothing important is going to happen anymore. So, like, why would we even need to have information we didn't already have?
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, it'll be so much easier.
Yeah. What new could possibly happen? I think it's all happened.
Right. Exactly. What could you possibly need to know?
Right.
Other than the things you've already been told. You don't need to know things.
Right. Exactly.
Right. Very good. And moving on, and something that is perhaps quintessentially fitting that mold, which we have just described, is Donald Trump. And we're up to our Trump dump. There we go. And so we can start off with the whole thing of his manipulating the economic markets. And you heard the talk about possibly having peace talks and peace agreement in place with Iran. And then when people looked into it a little bit, they noticed that, gosh, there were a whole bunch of stock trades that occurred just within the hour before the announcement. It's almost like some people had some information that other people didn't have, and they were able to use that to make decisions as far as how to make money off of it in the stock market. Now, I could have sworn that sort of thing was illegal. But
I mean, what is illegal, really?
right.
We pretty much stretched out that whole elastic, let's say.
Right.
And there's really no, it's open so wide as to encompass all. Everything's fine.
Yeah.
Unless you get caught doing it. then you're cooked.
Fair point. Yeah, so we'll see what comes of that, if that is actually something that is pursued by
I hope it's one of the many
Department of
charges that
Justice.
finally catches up to some people.
It's not in here, but I want to mention it because it's kind of similar. There's been these discussions from Trump, and he's saying that he's talking to like a head person in Iran or somebody who's in charge or whatever. And when they're like, "Oh, is it the Ayatollah?" and he's like, "No, but whoever is running things, I don't know. A lot of the people have been killed or whatever." And like, it could definitely be like just a Nigerian prince scandal of somebody being like, "I'm the person running Iran. Like, do these things."
Somebody got Grandpa's phone and just ran a scam on him. Yeah.
Right. I just feel like I don't know. And especially as the guy who's always like, he doesn't seem to get news from his own sources. He always gets them like from TV. Yeah, that could just be anybody just being like, "Oh yeah, I'm definitely in charge of this." Like,
Well, he
this is
gets
what you
his
should
stuff
do.
from RTE, but I think that he's the sort of person who, well, remember at one point he said he was leading Iran, that he
Right.
was going to step in and run it. So very possible that he's talking to himself.
It's true.
he's using by now an old tactic where he just says everything. It's them. It's me. It's me and them. It's neither of us. It's the boogeyman. It's Santa Claus. It's this. It's that. And it allows him. It has multiple benefits in that one. It shakes things up. Nobody knows what to. Oh my God! He said this, but he also said that. People who want to hear something that they want to hear it, and they ignore the rest of it. That keeps his fans happy, and he plays it like he's being cagey. Ooh, you never know what I'm going to do. I'm unpredictable. Uh, you know,
Well, he
you didn't know
does.
I was
Yeah,
going
he
to do
does.
that.
Yeah, he does it with everything. He
Yeah,
eventually takes every position, or at least
exactly.
two positions on everything, so that when whatever happens, he can say, "Well, look, I had said all
I
along
predicted it long ago.
that
Exactly.
it
Why
was
didn't you
right."
listen to
Exactly.
me?
And you can, and I can show you because I said A, and yeah, you're absolutely right. That's a standard Trump tactic.
Well, and it also makes good distractive arm waving. So he waves the left hand so you don't see the right one taking your watch. It's distraction. It's throws dust up and chaff up into the air and clouds the situation. And while you're still digging dust out of your eyes, he's gone off with your wallet. It's an old trick. I don't know why we're so damned gullible in this country. I'm losing faith.
Trump tactics. Yeah,
Yeah.
I agree. Well, I'll tell you what. Let's move to the to our next point here, which is the HHS with RFK Jr., who decided to eliminate vaccine committees and to downplay the usefulness of vaccines or the effectiveness of vaccines, or claim that it's actually doing harm instead of any good, by doing that with the COVID vaccine, and then with another set of vaccines. Apparently, there are now parents who are skipping all vaccines for their children, and they're just taking their lead from this idea with, oh well, it must be the case the vaccines are causing the illnesses, and that that is not safe for our children. Therefore, I'm not going to let my children have it. And the fact that this is now going to cause a number of epidemics, much less that it's not certainly not the safe thing for those kids. But they have a reason, right? They have something that can back up their play by saying this is what HHS says.
So it gives me hope, Matt, and I'll tell you why. There's times when, with humans being the dominant species on the planet, a couple of 100 years of industrial revolution, and we're just cooking the joint, we're ruining the place, and we're taking over. We're just encroaching in all natural areas, destroying species that have lived here for millennia, choking off our own atmosphere as we do it. And it gives me hope that we have such stupid, self-limiting properties as this, such that if we eradicate diseases that used to cripple children and kill people across the globe almost unnecessarily, almost needlessly, like totally preventably, I like that if we do that well enough for a couple of generations, that third or fourth generation will feel so entitled to the health that those vaccinations provide that they'll just throw them off like a wet blanket because they're too good for it, and they don't realize and appreciate the benefits. I feel like that'll keep us from completely terraforming, this planet anew into our own bastardized uh, image of neon and concrete. I feel like that it's good. We have these limiting prospects. Otherwise, we would destroy the place that much sooner, which again is another limiting property. So it gives me
You're
a
just
dark sort of hope.
you're saying if it's good enough for Mitch McConnell, gosh darn, it's good enough for you.
Absolutely,
I
absolutely
hear you.
not what I'm saying, but I hear
I
you.
thought it was just because of the funeral home you owned.
I've got one of those where we cash your check, but then we just stack the bodies out in the backyard. And after about 15, 20 years, the feds finally discover us. And, by then the jig is up, but we've made a good run at it. So come on down.
Years ago. And actually, that's a real case too. So that's all the more grotesque.
At least one. No, they get one every now and then.
Yeah. Um, well, speaking of the grotesque,
Indeed.
Vice President J.D. Vance, apparently he had a conversation or a meeting with the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, and they were discussing, or it is said that they met so that they could talk about potential agreements to end the military campaign against Iran. Now, the question is, do you believe this? And is there? I mean, is it any more than a PR stunt to get his name out there as the real leader who's going to follow up Trump, or is it genuinely done because maybe it was necessary for him to step in, and that
Trump was
somebody
out
else
filling a diaper somewhere, right?
wasn't right, who wasn't quite up to snuff, and so JD had to fulfill his job duties. What do you think?
I'm fully willing to believe that it happened, but will it get us anywhere productive? No.
I think about these things and in my limited little capacity, and I feel like if Vance arranged for this to be leaked, he knows exactly how comfortable his boss is with sharing the limelight. It seems like a self-injurious thing to do, and it would either be bold of him and he must sense a certain impending weakness that maybe we don't see as acutely, because otherwise you're taking on the boss. And this is a very thin-skinned, uh, get out of my spotlight boss. So it doesn't seem like he would do that himself unless he suspects again a certain weakness on the boss's level.
I
It could be put out to poison the water to get Trump to get angry at Vance. Maybe somebody did it to put the story out in the atmosphere to sort of sabotage him. I don't know. None of that makes any sense either.
I've got an alternative to that. An
Lay it on me.
alternative
You're
theory.
so wise in these things. Lay it on me.
Yeah, right. Exactly. I'm so wise. Look at me. Look where I am. But I think there's another possibility, which is that they agreed to this. I don't think that he did it behind his back because he's going to the press, and I think the press is going to say it, and then it's going to be out there. Even Trump could bump into something that was reported by somebody he didn't particularly know or like. So there is the option that it was set up, that it was not Vance himself, but it was his PR guy. His PR guy said, "Look, we've got to do something to raise your profile. There is going to be an election. There will be 2028, and Trump's not going to be in that election, and we all know it. And he's not going to run again. And whatever we say between now and then about that is irrelevant. We've got to start raising your profile because once the 2026 elections are out of the way, then we've got to. I mean, the day after the 2026 election, the 2028 election begins, and so we've got to raise your profile so that you can make a move for the nomination. And the only way to do that is to try to scare off potential rivals by raising your profile. And you're the man. You're obviously the choice. There's no one who should challenge you because you're going to step right in. And the only way to do that is to raise his profile specifically on international issues and not domestic. One, because they've screwed up domestic so badly, but frankly, they've screwed up the international as well. But at least it gives you uh, a spotlight where you don't have to share it with anybody else from the states. You're the representative of the United States, and so it makes you look better, and it gives you a certain credibility. So I think that's as much a possibility as any other.
Yeah, I agree with that. I also think it allows Trump the ability to be like, "Look, I went in, I won the war. We already talked about how I won the war. The war was over, and Vance is just like maintaining peace there. And so if anything that goes wrong in the future is not my fault because I won the war when it was under me. So anything that collapses now, that's Vance."
Yeah, that's all him. I actually I won the peace by bombing them.
I'm still
That's what Trump
skeptical
did.
that Trump would share the spotlight in such a way to let uh, Vance canoodle with Netanyahu.
I think well I understand what you're saying, and I know he's that arrogant and egotistical. That's certainly true. But I also think he's thinking they could sell it to him easily enough by saying this is the sort of thing that will be your legacy, and it only maintains as a legacy if we keep power. And so we need to make certain that our guy is the nominee. This is our guy. Let's do this. And as
Hmm.
long as Vance doesn't try to make it about himself, and as long as, in other words, as long as Vance doesn't go to the meeting and say, "Oh," publicly comes out afterwards and say, "Well, I am the one who really has
Right.
made this possible."
Hmm.
He has to continually say, "Oh, it was all Trump. It was all Trump. I'm just here to help with the details, um, and to help with the negotiations, and I'm going to take over. So I got to do it." But I mean, the truth is, maybe we'll know 10 years from now. Maybe there'll be an expose in 5 or 10 years that will have some element of what
Yeah.
actually happened.
After the
Um,
radiation dissipates and we can come out of the caves again, yeah.
exactly, exactly. But it's certainly not something that we're going to know in the next 2 to 4 years. We'll get through 2028 without any uh, any knowledge of it. Well, and let's have one more piece of here, one more piece in this, and then we'll move on to our outro, which is in Florida's Palm Beach. The House District 87 had a special election. The seat was vacated, so it was an empty seat and has been since August. And so the election was held, and unexpectedly, the Democratic candidate, Emily Gregory, won.
Well, how'd you look at that? Florida.
Yeah, and more
Hey.
specifically, Palm Beach, which is where a certain Mar-a-Lago is.
I've heard of that.
So yeah, so Trump's home base there in Palm Beach has been electing Democrats to different positions in local government, and now they've done the House seat as well, and that's with Trump having publicly endorsed the Republican candidate. So all this perception out there that he's this mastermind who picks people and they just win because he endorsed them, didn't even win his own hometown. So interesting, certainly interesting. Um, Gregory credits the affordability issue. She says that that was the concern that the voters had, and that she was able to talk about that resonated with them and pulled in the votes. Now,
Got that Mom Donnie vibe rolling.
yeah, a little bit of Manami mixed in. And also, this touches on the mail issue that we talked about earlier, using the postal system, I should say. And that's because there were about 3,000 mail in votes that had come in for her. And the Republican could not overcome that because on election day, he only wound up getting about 2,200 votes. So by her being able to get the mail in votes, that's where her margin of victory was. Now, that's the sort of thing that is the reason why the Republicans cry and have little tantrums about mail in votes and elections where you can send in your ballot before election day and get it postmarked, but it will still be counted if it gets there a couple of days later because the mail was slow or because of where it came from. And so that might explain some of their deep, deep concerns. But Tom, I think you mentioned before we started about mail-in voting. Somebody who did that. What do you recall what that was all about?
You know, I heard that Trump was pretty upset about mail-in voting, called it a bunch of scams and schemes. It turns out he mailed in a vote himself, at least one, and yeah, and I thought, this is a felon. Are you allowed to legally vote as a felon? Hasn't
Actually,
served any time, but he's a felon.
could you say his name again?
Oh, that is Donald John Trump.
What?
What?
To be fair, him doing it is probably proof that it potentially is a scam.
Right, exactly. As I said, the whole lot that make the most noise about it are the ones that keep trying it. Speaking of things they try, we have the Epstein count up coming up here, and that is the days since the unredacted Epstein list has not been released, and we're at day 3,935. Though members of Congress have seen it, and it has outraged them. Even the Republicans get the point now if they see the unredacted version. But the public has not seen it, and we don't know whether or not we ever will. This countdown may be going long after PolitiPod Live is dust. Thanks for joining us at PolitiPod Live for Political Talk. You're welcome to join us every Wednesday from 6 p.m. Pacific Time or 9 p.m. Eastern Time right here for PolitiPod Live. If you want a political laugh, you can join us and a half dozen of our friends for the monthly political comedy podcast, PolitiPod. You'll find it at soundcloud.com/PolitiPod.
This is Tom Bickle.
Hannah Soldner.
And Matt Nisanoff saying goodbye.